What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing Bigfoot encounters and interdimensional portals. As you can hear, I have lost my voice. It's gone. But the show must go on, so I've heard your complaints about some volume issues, and I'm going to be trying to set up a microphone this week. So bear with me for this last video, and let's hope that by the next time we meet, I have full voice and the microphone works. All right? Okay. Before we get into this video today, I want to first talk about the fact that I have stated many times that I have seen people I know and trust in this field channel and communicate with Bigfoot, either a family of them or the head one in charge of a group, cluster, or community, and I believe very much so that they are interdimensionals who love our woods and forested areas and who take their young here often to teach them how to hunt and play. However, they are from at least the 7th dimension and therefore are very much aware of how human beings can murder for absolutely no reason, and they understand that their existence has yet to be actually proven here in the 3D, and that many hunters who roam the woods with guns would love nothing more than to find fame as the first person to ever kill, and therefore definitively prove that they, Bigfoot, do in fact exist. Not to mention, we are the worst of the worst as a whole in the grand scheme of things, and creatures and other entities from higher dimensions view us as hateful and even oftentimes warmongering. Therefore, I want to make it clear that we will never actually find or be able to kill and or capture a Bigfoot until they are ready to sacrifice one of their own for the greater good. I haven't even covered this yet, despite having the information right here at my disposal in my computer for a really long time, because Bigfoot to me are spiritual beings and something transcendent and beautiful, full of peace and love for the most part. They aren't killers or abductors, and they probably most likely would attack a human only if absolutely 100% necessary, meaning if a human were attacking it or its loved one and or child, and for whatever reason there wasn't time, or for some other reason I as a human can't even comprehend, they just couldn't switch out of the 3D, then they would be left with no choice. It's never really occurred to me that Bigfoot sometimes is accused of attacking people, and I'm gonna look more into that. I just think of them as genuinely such spiritual and peaceful, loving species of being that I would find it hard to believe, even if I came across what others would consider completely credible information. That's not to say I don't think that as with all species, there aren't a few bad seeds or bad apples in the group. And this is just my own opinions, guys, so I don't need to be attacked in the comments. Like sometimes with UFOs, people get mad at me. They're like, they're not all good. They're not all here for peace. I know that. I'm aware. So for today, I'm simply going to cover some encounters that could point to actual proof of Bigfoot, at the very least, being interdimensional. That is, of course, depending on what you believe. I reiterate, I don't need or want to change your mind, but of course, would love to open it a bit and just get you thinking. So regardless of where you stand now on the Bigfoot issue, and I know it can be quite controversial, let's just have some fun with it if we can. With all of that being said, I know it isn't even really known if Bigfoot is a primate, hominid, or something altogether different. That is, factually. There are even people who believe that Bigfoot is simply a regular animal we just haven't discovered yet. Miss Smoochy Smoochy, this one's for you. Let's just jump right in, shall we? There are a lot of reports out there from people who claim to have either seen Bigfoot materialize or dematerialize in or out of thin air right in front of them. This leads me to believe that the witness actually caught a glimpse of an entity, in this case the big guy himself, as it passed through the veil or a portal. This is what our first witness described, and it happened in Leominster State Park in Massachusetts, USA. Leominster is 4,246 acres of dense woods and forest and sprawls through Leominster, Fitchburg, Princeton, Sterling, and Westminster. Our witness's name is Ronnie LeBlanc, and he is not only a native of Leominster, but also a local historian as well. Ronnie claims to have had several encounters with the same creature, starting with when he was just 12 years old. He says he has seen things that have him thoroughly convinced that Bigfoot is much more than your average undiscovered primate stupidly roaming the woods. Ronnie said of what he experienced, quote, "There was one particular trail that I always used to avoid. It always had a very dark, ominous feeling to it. It would be a beautiful day and you looked down this thing and it looked dark. There were 2 trees on either side. It just felt like this prehistoric gate welcoming me into this place. I started going down this trail with my bike and I could just hear the bike squeaking, and I noticed there were no other sounds in the forest. Nothing. The trail just had a feeling to it. So I was there, and all of a sudden I realized there was no sound, no animal or bird life, just these 2 huge trees that were like a doorway. There was no life there at all. I was standing there with my feet on the ground, and all of a sudden the quiet turned into a loud noise. At that moment, something crashed through the woods right in front of me, and I could feel it reverberating in the soles of my feet. To me, it sounded like an elephant crashing into the woods right near me. It was pushing trees and shrubs, went across the trail and onto the other side, but I couldn't see anything. That's what was disturbing. I was so scared and I couldn't move. Once it stopped, I pedaled out of there so fast and never went back." End quote. We talk about this a lot too. It happened to me many times, but the first time I ever really distinctly noticed it, the quietness of a wooded area that otherwise should have been, or just a second ago, was flooded with all the regular and normal, oftentimes very loud sounds of the forest, gone completely quiet. This, at least in my opinion, means there is a very fearsome, oftentimes apex predator around, and all of the other wildlife sensed this somehow and ran for cover. It also happens when you're on the precipice or about to enter some sort of vortex and or portal. It's like the shifting realities where, at least as far as I believe, everything is moving through this vortex at a much faster rate than at the speed of sound, and therefore the sound has to catch up, and there is none. Ronnie alleges that in this exact same area, there have been many reports from other people as well, where they have claimed to have heard something crashing through the trees that seemed to be quite large and abnormally loud. This is a common thing reported when people are pretty sure they almost encountered a Bigfoot. They hear something crashing through the trees, and sometimes they even witness trees being literally trampled over, yet don't ever seem to catch an actual glimpse of the culprit. Ronnie believes that whatever is causing the above-mentioned ruckus must be able to cloak itself and or dematerialize at will. I definitely believe that Bigfoot is able to cloak itself in the way of the Harry Potter invisibility cloak, or even like the Glimmer Man / Predator entity you guys know fascinates and terrifies me oh so much. It's like you can still see the blur of the thing, whatever it is, but can't actually see what it really is, which leaves you inevitably wondering if it is anything at all. Those of us with extrasensory abilities will be able to at least make something out of it, right? Like, we'll be able to at least sense it, but Ronnie isn't one of us. He's a regular guy who didn't know what to think of what he was now witnessing and said of his opinions and of it all, quote, "I would say Bigfoot is something that's more interdimensional, almost spiritual kind of a realm that has the ability to manifest itself. I started off chasing an ape, a flesh and blood animal, and now I'm thinking it's something else. As you dig deeper into Bigfoot, you start talking about cloaking and the fact that they can vanish before people's eyes. And these stories go back hundreds of years, where all of a sudden a posse has this creature cornered and the tracks just disappear in an open field, like something just came, picked it up, and took it away. So all these stories start to intertwine, and I started to go back and I went, a lot of these people are talking about these similar encounters that I had. So there is a belief that Bigfoot could be alien or interdimensional. And it sounds crazy, like something in science fiction, but when you think about it, we have this preconceived notion that an alien has to be gray or green. People have seen Bigfoot holding an orb. They look like a basketball with plasma swirling around, and they're silent. I've just seen them hovering over the sky and just blink out and disappear. There are a lot of different theories about Bigfoot. The reality is something is happening. People are seeing them. They are leaving tracks," end quote. Yes, in fact, they are leaving them. And more recently, there has even been alleged tusks or whatever of hair that's been left behind. It's said that the hair has been snagged on trees, and that when tested for DNA, it doesn't match any known creature on this earth. I don't really know, guys, if that's all true or not. As most of you know already, I am very new to the cryptid part of this community and have some playing catch up to do. I will look more into it if you'd like. Just let me know in the comments below, please, and I'll get right on it. I don't believe Bigfoot is an animal that automatically sheds, despite its being extremely hairy. I believe it is very careful when in this dimension because of the implication, should it leave anything behind, like its hair, to be DNA and or genetically tested. If there were proof of its existence, undeniable proof that something existed in these woods that we call Bigfoot or something similar, and even altogether different, it would be more dangerous even for them and their young when they come here. If there were proof of its existence, undeniable proof that something existed in these woods that we call Bigfoot or something similar, and even something altogether different, it would be even more dangerous for them and their young when they come here for their interdimensional vacations and field trips here in our 3D world. I believe sometimes, as with anything else, there are accidents that happen. I don't really believe inter or extra dimensionals are accident prone by their very nature, but when in this 3D reality, they are subject to these 3D rules. So the tracks they leave aren't indisputable or undeniable proof, but it does get people excited. According to our witness, this particular area of land / area of the world has had tons of reported Bigfoot sightings and experiences dating all the way back to at least the year 1884. In fact, it isn't just the big guy himself. This place is a literal hotbed of otherworldly phenomena. Reports of strange or unknown creatures not only attacking but killing the livestock, sightings of shadow entities all over people's land, inside and out of their homes, and even UFO sightings and extraterrestrial encounters. This isn't swamp gas here, guys. There have also been numerous reports of strange balls of light and what I can only find described as, quote, strange, scary creatures and beings, end quote. Could this area just be a hot spot or hotbed for unexplained phenomena? Possibly even just for interdimensional activity. I mean, with this much happening all in this condensed area of the world, I would most certainly say yes. There is a whole list of witnesses who reported things like what I just mentioned above, but also and mainly of Bigfoot being spotted somewhere, but simply then blinking out of existence right before the eyes of startled witnesses. There is also a paper that lists these reports and encounters called Vanishing Bigfoot and Anecdotal Accounts, Implications and Challenges for Researchers by Sharon Cornett. What a mouthful. One of these cases is from a man named John Bohannon and happened in the summer of the year 2000. John claims that he had his strange encounter one day while driving along a lone dirt road just west of the Three Rivers campground near Alamogordo, New Mexico. John was driving and minding his own business when, as he turned to his left, he allegedly out of nowhere saw a massive bipedal ape-like creature just walking along almost right next to his vehicle. The creature is said to have been about 8 feet tall and hairy. John slowed down to get a better look, and he said that the thing had reddish-brown hair all over its body. The hair would have looked quite short at first glance, but because he was now driving almost at the same pace this thing was walking, he could see that there was shorter hair on top of the longer hair. He described the thing's face as, quote, looking like Neanderthal, end quote. This creature, which does sound a lot like our friend Bigfoot, simply walked briskly along at the same pace as John's car and actually had its head turned in order to also stare at John the way he was staring at it. It was almost as though the creature was either playing some sort of ironic game or that it was just as shocked to see the human as the human was to see it. The two of them stared at each other and kept pace for a distance of approximately 100 meters when suddenly the creature seemed to start to just slowly fade out of existence until all at once it disappeared altogether. It was described as though the thing simply walked through some sort of wall and vanished into the ether right before the eyes of a very confused and most likely very scared witness. John described it as though the creature simply just, quote, walked through an invisible wall, end quote. Let's go a little bit further back in time and discuss another account found in the above-mentioned paper. This one happened in 1980 in August near Eugene, Oregon. Our witness's name is Larry Kelm, and this one is a bit hard to classify, but let's take a look at it anyways. It looks to me like yet another case of Bigfoot vanishing into thin air right in front of another perplexed witness. Now, most of us in this community will agree that this is the result of some sort of interdimensional crossing, but let me know what you all think, as always, in the comments below. Okay, so Larry decided to go for a hike by himself along the Molalla Indian Trail. This particular trail connects the ridges of Saddle Blanket Mountain to nearby Oak Ridge. The hike started off as normal. It seemed to be just a regular hike on a beautiful and sunny day in August. However, seemingly within the blink of an eye, Larry reports the whole atmosphere and environment changed. The day was suddenly not sunny anymore, but sort of overcast. It was as if everything, not just the sky, but even it seemed somewhat the air around him, was tinged with a sort of gray color. There were still no clouds in the sky though, so there seemed to be no explanation at all for the overcast, and it all became very strange, very fast. Larry described it as sort of like there was a shadow cast over the land he was hiking on and that it came out of nowhere. Larry explained, quote, "I was walking along the trail enjoying the strong breeze and bright sunshine when in the middle of a step, everything around me started to turn gray and blurry. The only way I can describe it was if I suddenly was looking through someone else's prescription sunglasses. I finished the step and started another. Every inch I moved forward, the darkness increased and the gray blurring turned into a jumble of shapes that made no sense," end quote. Larry said just as quickly as all of this happened, it all ended, and it was as though he had walked through some sort of invisible barrier. Though the gray overcast was now gone, it was also now nighttime, and when he had first noticed the strange atmosphere, it had been in the middle of a bright and sunny, somewhat breezy day. It was no longer beautiful, bright, and breezy. The weather was now humid. Larry described it as almost like being in a rainforest, as far as not only the weather, but the vegetation as well. It was all very bizarre. Where before there was regular woods and the hiking trail, now there was thick, unrecognizable, somewhat hazardous vegetation. He felt as though he had crossed over into some invisible barrier into a jungle. This obviously made no sense at all because he was in Oregon. Oregon, which most of us know, is nowhere near anything that could be called a jungle. The air was thick and described as, quote, "oppressively humid," end quote. It was hard to breathe, and Larry was now not only in a state of confusion, but one of panic as well. There was no moon in the sky to be seen despite it being nighttime, and the sky was simply black. It was somehow bright and clear, yet pitch black as well. Larry was able to see where he was going, again, despite there being no discernible or recognizable moon or stars anywhere. It was almost as though there was some sort of unseen force casting this mysterious light so Larry could see where he was going. The second he managed to get his bearings, Larry said that all of a sudden there was a, quote, "continuous high-pitched keening sound," end quote, piercing the air. As soon as this sound filled the air around him and almost, or seemingly so anyways, blew out his eardrums, Larry said he was overwhelmed with an almost primal sense of fear, dread, doom, and danger. It was unbearable. Larry goes on to explain not only what happened next, but what he thinks about the whole situation, saying, quote, "There were no stars in the sky, but there was a diffused light that let me see everything clearly. However, I couldn't tell what this light source was. As often happens when the human body receives a massive dose of adrenaline, the entire incident appeared like it was in slow motion, and even though I was only there for a second or two, I had time to observe my surroundings. The silence was broken by continuous high-pitched keening sound, and I was nearly overwhelmed with a sense of fear and danger. My momentum caused me to take one more step before stopping in my tracks. It was at this point I heard a whispered, 'Gotcha,' right over my right shoulder. I couldn't tell if I heard it with my ears or inside my head. The word wasn't directed at me, but something said the word quietly to itself. I was so terrified I actually felt my heart stop for a moment. That whispered word is what saved me. I opened my mouth and gasped in a huge gush of thick air and recoiled backward in the same footsteps I had entered wherever I was. As I threw myself backward, I looked over my right shoulder. A dark-colored, hairy right hand and arm was reaching for my throat over my shoulder. The hand had pale ivory spade-shaped fingernails. The nails looked clean and almost had a manicured look to them. The thumb was placed lower towards the wrist on the hand than a human's is. Both hand and arm were thin and powerful looking, and both were covered with thick, coarse, black hair. I got a good look at it because the thumbnail grazed my neck. It did not break the skin as I moved backwards. As I continued backwards, the hand clutched where my neck had been a split second before, and it seemed to fade off into the distance as I returned through the portal. I took 2 more steps backward, and everything reversed itself from what had just happened. The world around me became lighter. The fir and pines gradually came back into view, and by the 3rd step, I was back on Saddle Blanket Mountain. I continued to move backwards in terror, and as I did, I observed that where I had just come from was a shimmering oval patch of air about the size of a large door. The woods behind it looked like it was underwater. By the 5th backward step, the shimmering area seemed to just evaporate, and everything was back to normal. By then, my lungs had nearly burst from the volume of air I had inhaled during the huge gasp I had just taken. My body felt like it was on fire from the adrenaline surge. I spun around and ran back down the trail as fast as my legs could carry me and didn't stop until I reached my truck. I was nearly 2 days getting to that place and about 3 hours getting back. It had been a trap, pure and simple. Whatever it was that tried to kill me somehow kept the portal hidden from me on the way in, and I didn't actually see it until I was back out again. I had terrible nightmares for years and still haven't come to grips with what had happened. Severely shaken, I've read everything I could get my hands on about people who have mysteriously disappeared throughout history and discovered several instances where people have vanished in plain sight of others. The quantum physics people have a theory about parallel universes. They just might be right, end quote. Okay, I really think that this is worth mentioning here, and I'm sure that some of you watching or listening to this will know better than me, as usual, and as I am, admittedly, a noob when it comes to cryptids, Bigfoot included. So, I feel like the Bigfoots I have seen channeled and that I have channeled myself have all been of the reddish-haired variety discussed in the first encounter we covered here. I have come across just a few other encounters with these black-haired cryptid things, possibly other Bigfoot or something altogether different, who do, or so it seems to me, hunt human beings in almost the exact same way. I just made a note to do a video on the different colors of hair they tend to have and how they all seem to behave based on the hair color. But right now I ask, could there be a connection between the red-haired ones and the black or brown-haired ones? And why are the black-haired ones almost always seemingly more sinister and attacking people, whilst the reddish-haired ones are the ones I know to be more higher vibrational and more peaceful beings? The ones with the brown hair seem to fall somewhere in between, again, as far as what I've researched and my own experience. Am I making too much of this, or is there something here? If we only go by the accounts that I've so far presented to you right here, then I would say we're onto something. But there's massive amounts of information out there that I admittedly don't know about or haven't even been able to take the time to research yet. So you guys let me know what you all think, please. I feel excited, like I just made some sort of connection, but honestly, I have no idea. In getting back to what Larry said he experienced, what do you guys think the trap was about? Do we honestly think here that these darker colored Bigfoots are abducting human beings and trapping them through portals? Do we think all Bigfoot are doing this? Could this be one of the many explanations for the missing phenomenon, where people are randomly going missing in the woods all over the world and they're almost never seen or heard from again? It makes perfect sense to me, as sometimes the people literally disappear in the blink of an eye and in front of witnesses. I wonder if Larry weren't alone that day, what whoever was with him would have seen. Honestly, there's no way of really knowing, but in my opinion, it is worth the speculation, at least in this case. Let's move on though before I jump down a rabbit hole and get stuck there right in front of you guys. You don't want that, because trust me, it gets crazy. Our next encounter comes from a witness known only as Miss Montanez. Miss Montanez was driving along a highway east of El Paso, Texas in the United States, and she claimed she looked over and spotted a Bigfoot hunched over a dead coyote. Obviously, she slowed down to take a better look and make sure she was seeing what she thought she was seeing. She claims that as the creature noticed she had slowed down to get a better look at it and what it was doing, it began to slowly sink into the solid ground until it was no longer there. It had seemingly sunk into some sort of portal in the ground, or that's what it seemed like. Our witness was confused and told herself there had to have been some sort of hole or cave in the ground, which the creature retreated when it noticed it was being observed. But when either she or someone else she told about it, the details get a little sketchy here. There was determined to be nothing there in the ground or anywhere near there where something, especially something as massive as this Bigfoot creature was, could have just disappeared into. So she either stopped her car right then and there and went to look, but more likely, from what I understand, she went back and got somebody to come immediately back with her to investigate what she thought she saw. When they went back to get a better look, it got even more interesting. Not much time had passed before the area was investigated, and there were no footprints and also no dead coyote either. This is where this encounter ends, but I wonder, what color was the creature she saw? Was it perhaps looking at the dead coyote as a food form, or, and bear with me here and hear me out please, let's consider what we know about Bigfoot. Well, consider what you know if you believe and trust in me and what I tell you, which is that most of them are peaceful seventh dimensional entities who are fearful of human beings and avoid us at all costs by shifting in and out of dimensions to make sure we can't prove their existence. So could it be possible that the creature was somehow trying to heal the coyote? I don't know, guys, and honestly it's impossible to determine without more information, but again, it's worth considering at least. Let's take a quick look at an encounter in the book called The Psychic Sasquatch and Their UFO Connection by Kiwani Lespertis, MS. MS suffix means someone that has a master's in science degree, just so you guys know, because I had to look that up. Anyway, in this book, there was an encounter reported by a witness named Mrs. Jeffrey. Mrs. Jeffrey was with a group of hikers, but it doesn't say, at least not in my source material, where they were hiking, so we don't have a lot of information to go off of here right from the bat. The witness reports that as she and other hikers were walking along their trail, a 9-foot tall Bigfoot stepped directly in front of them, and as soon as it registered what they were now looking at or being faced with, the creature seemingly disintegrated into thin air right before their very eyes. The group is insistent, and not a single one would be swayed in reporting that the thing, quote, simply dematerialized, end quote, right there in the very instant it registered on its face that it had been spotted by or had stepped directly into the path of not just one, but a whole group of human beings. This account leans a lot more toward what I have learned by channeling Bigfoot, and that they are scared of us, or at the very least they are cautious of us. Mrs. Jeffrey specifically was so disturbed by the experience that immediately after she refused to leave her house for weeks on end and vowed never to step foot in that area of woods ever again for the rest of her life, wherever it allegedly was. So that's pretty intense and seems as though it definitely traumatized our poor witness. I mean, I would imagine, if what I believe is right, that the Sasquatch was also traumatized and most likely would have taken a hiatus from this dimension for a while after that as well. But again, that is pure speculation and depends on what and or who you believe. There's no more information on that one, but that book sounds right up my alley, so if I ever find the time to read it, I will let you guys know what's up with it. A witness near Manchester, Texas, reported to the Texas Bigfoot Research Center that in 1990 he was out deer hunting in Red River County, Texas, when he had his strange and interesting encounter. Our unnamed witness was simply sitting on a stool and waiting for a deer to pass when he saw a figure about 120 yards away from where he was sitting. The figure was approximately 10 feet tall and very dark. He thought at first maybe he was simply looking at a large tree stump and decided, for whatever reason, to take a closer look through his telescopic rifle scope and got the shock of his life when he did. He reported a massive, giant, ape-like creature that was hunched over and staring directly back at him. Our witness continued to observe this creature until, for what he described as a, quote, split second, end quote, he looked away because he thought he heard the snap of twigs and branches nearby him. When he looked immediately back through his scope, though, the creature was gone. As our witness continued through the scope to look through the woods for the creature, he found it was nowhere to be seen. It was basically a grassy meadow with a few woods or trees, so there was nowhere really it could have gone and hid, especially with the size that our witness reported that it was. Plus, our witness swears it vanished literally in the blink of that eye. Again, this is reminiscent, in my opinion, of the people missing all over the world in the woods. The witness would put a lot of thought into this, though, and eventually concluded that the momentary snap of a twig that diverted his attention from the alleged Bigfoot must have been some sort of purposeful diversion by the creature in order for the human being observing it to not discover where it went or how it had gone wherever it had gone. He said of the incident, quote, at this time I got up and left everything but my rifle and backed out of the area. I had this thing dead to rights in my scope but couldn't shoot because I did not feel threatened, end quote. The twig snap never produced anything either. It was like somehow something did purposefully distract him, and I wholeheartedly do believe that. Let's go now to an encounter reported on my most favoritist show and one I fully intend to be on, and very soon, Coast to Coast AM. This episode happened on July 15th, 2016, and my boy George Norrie hosted it. The witness only referred to himself as Gene, and he was from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Gene says he was out hunting elk around 7 in the morning right near the border town of Gallup, which is directly on the Arizona-Mexico border from what I understand. The land he was hunting on was a Navajo reservation, and Gene described the area as, quote, remote, rugged, and mountainous, end quote. As he was hunting for elk, he claims to have been overwhelmed with the feeling that not only was something following him, but that whatever it was massive in size. He said it was like he was being stalked almost, and it was more than just a bit unsettling. Here is some of the transcript from the original show where Gene explains in his own words what happened to him and his experience out there that day. Quote, I am an ex-Navy corpsman. I know when something's following me. I'm about an hour and a half back in, and I'm way out in the middle of nowhere. So I go around and I end up on a box canyon on top of this mesa that overlooks the boonies. It's like a 1,000-foot drop off. Okay, real quick, I head back towards the box canyon. I was trying to get away from whatever is following me. All of a sudden, I hear these thundering footsteps, and I lean up against the wall, and here comes about 7 horses out from the middle of nowhere into this box canyon. Wild horses. I get around the box canyon, and there it is. It jumps off the top of a 20-foot dead-end box canyon. I was at the bottom, I'm looking up, and now I'm looking at it, and it jumped 1 foot down, 1 foot up on the side. It was exactly what everybody says that you guys talk about. Here's where George Norrie asks, Bigfoot? Our witness replies, yeah, and I'm in the middle of the Indian reservation on the top of a little mesa. It blew my mind. It looked right at me. I was less than 50 yards from it. I took off running. I didn't freeze. I took off running. Then something threw a rock at me. It was a huge rock. I'd say it weighed about 8 pounds. It would have killed me. I looked and I tripped out. At 120 to 200 yards there it was, and it looked at me. I'm sorry, George, but that far, I'm telling you, it blew my mind. It threw an 8-pound rock at least 120 yards, and this thing was not small. This thing was huge, end quote. So I guess the Bigfoot allegedly throwing rocks should throw us off the horses randomly running through the area, or is this just normal for this region? I'm serious. Wild horses, is that, I'm gonna sound so stupid, but is that a thing? I'm from Paterson, New Jersey. We don't have random horses. I don't know. All right, let's move on to the Bigfoot, okay? This alleged Bigfoot. How many reports have we come across where they do indeed, or are at least alleged to, throw rocks at human beings? This to me is strange because usually from what I know and have experienced, they're a pretty peaceful creature. Again, though, I question whether or not the rock would have actually killed him, but I have no way of knowing and don't like to discredit or judge people, so we'll leave that up in the air. While I believe rocks were thrown at him, I'm thinking more that it was a kind of automatic defense mechanism where the thing was simply trying to scare the human away from where it was, the human with the gun. Also, now that I'm on this new thing with the colors, I question that theory myself and would love to know the color of this creature, but again, have no way of knowing. Definitely interesting though, why was it stalking him? My initial and gut reaction and thought to that fact, I feel like maybe it had youngins or family in the area it felt it needed to protect, again, from the human with the gun. So maybe it was just like an immediate instinct to start throwing rocks to head the human off. I really don't know. I could be wrong. I look forward to seeing what you guys say and your reactions to this in the comments. So while Gene claims that his initial instinct was to run or take flight, he then goes on to say that he decided to turn and shoot at it. Just an aside, this type of behavior is exactly why we will never actually be able to just come across and get to know a Bigfoot, and also why they will never allow themselves or their dead to be caught. I'm just saying. Gene claims he turned and aimed and landed a hit directly on the creature, but that instead of dropping to the ground or making some sort of animalistic noise to indicate it had been hit, it simply vanished into thin air instead. Freaked out, but still very interested in what the hell was happening, and I'm sure with his adrenaline still very much pumping, our witness went to investigate where he had just shot this massive beast and found nothing but gigantic footprints. There was no blood, no body, nothing at all besides the footprints to indicate anything at all had been there, let alone had been injured. He claims it simply, quote, phased out of reality, end quote. Gene goes on to tell Norrie, quote, I don't know where it's from, but wherever it came from, when I hit it, it had the ability to just disappear into thin air. You know, I looked, I followed the footprints, I walked the 120 yards. It wasn't that far from the top of a mesa. It had nowhere to go. Never ever have I seen it again, and never ever have I gone back. Not by myself, end quote. So let's discuss for a moment here before we end what these people are actually reporting and the implications of all of it. If we only go by these reports, even though there are so many more indicating the exact same thing, we would be hard-pressed to go against the logical assumption that Bigfoot is more interdimensional than biological and or flesh and blood. Could the fact that they are interdimensional be the reason for the confusion in the community of research and interest surrounding them? Is this why there is never any real evidence left behind, and why, in the at least hundreds of years of reports coming out about encounters with and sightings of, that we have never once, depending what you believe, again, I have to keep saying that, been able to capture an actually clear photo? No bodies, dead or alive, and basically no clear and convincing evidence to lend any real credence to them existing at all. It's the absolute same in cases of the Fae across the board, and I believe that's why people are constantly and consistently trying to connect the two life forms, but in my opinion, the only thing they have in common is the fact that they're both interdimensional beings, but they don't even come from the same dimension for the most part. So that's kind of where the similarities end. All of these types of alleged encounters or sightings, combined with the more traditional type of the same, researchers have come forward suggesting perhaps we expand what we really believe Bigfoot to be. One of these researchers is a researcher of the paranormal named William Hall. William says of it all, quote, "It used to be that the UFO people didn't talk about the ghost people because they were a little weird, and nobody would talk to the Bigfoot people because they were crazy. I found out we cannot continue to do that. In reality, quantum physics is leading us there, that portals could be why we don't see any bodies, why there are no bones. I have no official opinion on it. I leave nothing off the table because there are a lot of things we find in our field work that we cannot explain," end quote. Bravo, and I wholeheartedly agree. I have said the same thing so many times. Each of us in these separate communities all have a different piece of the exact same puzzle. We need to stop judging and being closed-minded, because until we open up our spirits to the limitless possibilities of not just the world we live in, but in the universe and metaverse, we won't even gain one closer step to understanding what is actually happening. That's all I have for you today, guys. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed the content and hanging out with me. Spread the love by sharing this video, and please subscribe if you haven't already. In the description box, you will find important links about my business, how to make purchases from me for manifestation intention sprays, spiritual helper boxes, and crystal packets, etc., etc. Website coming soon, ad nauseum. Ways to donate to the channel, PayPal, Cash App. If you join my Patreon for $20 a month or more, you will receive, among other things, a personal monthly intuitive oracle reading from me to you as a thank you, as a gift. For more information on personal intuitive oracle readings, what I offer, prices, etc., you can email me, or for anything else, any other kind of correspondence, at GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com. Links for the paperback and Kindle versions of all 3 of my books, Missing the Faith Theory, Encounters with Evil, 101 True and Terrifying Stories, and my newest, Shadow Entities, Sleep Paralysis and Beyond, on Amazon. Or if you would like a signed copy, please email me, GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com, before you make the purchase. Wednesday nights, right here on this channel, you will find myself and Ghost Dragon ZW, where I pull one card from one random deck and give you an oracle reading for that week. That's to bring people in and get them interested in oracle, to see what I do, to see if they want to get personals. But also, it's a really great place to hang out. The vibe is always really high. Everyone's super friendly. I know I'm forgetting tons of stuff, but it is what it is. My second article in the Paranormal Press magazine has been out for a while. I finally got the copy. I keep forgetting to show it to you guys, but I'll premiere it on Wednesday night. That's for sure. And the oracle reading is from 7:30ish to 11ish p.m. Eastern time, but we do kind of stop when there's no one left to read for. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes we go later to like 11:30. Usually, on most weeks, on Thursday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern time, it's myself and Ghost Dragon ZW in a topic-based live stream. It's kind of like a chit-chat where we kind of talk about a topic that week, but normally we just end up chit-chatting. And Mondays, what I tried to do is at 11 a.m. Eastern, premiere a pre-recorded video like this one. Now, the Mondays and Thursdays are interchangeable. Sometimes it'll be a live stream, sometimes it's pre-recorded content. I'm trying to get my schedule together. I've been sick all of the holidays, so give me a little bit of time on that. I'm trying to see what works best for me, but also for you guys as well. Please hit me up. My Amazon wish list gift link if you want to send me a gift, crystals, decks, anything and everything under the sun. That's also in the description box. Donations are what I live on. They would help the channel keep going. They would help me be able to buy decks, crystals. They would help me be able to not have to work outside of the home and be able to bring you content, do research, write books, things like that. So please consider making a donation to the channel, or donating your time by coming in, giving me views, giving the thumbs up. Don't forget to like. I'm getting like 200 views and like 30 likes. I don't know why that's happening. Maybe some of you guys are forgetting. Guys, be kind to each other. It doesn't cost anything. Be kind to yourselves, and never accept anything less than others being kind to you. Remember, if no one told you today, you are beautiful, capable, amazing. I believe in you. Abundance and blessing is your birthright as a human being. You just have to claim it. Always go in grace, smile at a stranger, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.